Hey guys, I've been having a lot of requests to pump up some of the content, and been asked to cover some backstory on the why and how, so to speak, this so-called country got into the situation it's in, and the so-called the citizens have become slaves, so to speak. So, real quick, I'm going to break this down into a three-part series. I'm going to cover a little bit of some backstory, contracts, and then money at the back end. There's going to be a little bit of overlap on all three, simply based on the fact that it's all pretty well tied together. So, that being said, uh, this will be a, hopefully fairly um, understandable. I'm going to try to make it as quick and layman terms as possible here. So, that being said, oh, and by the way, for all you so called badologists, yes, I might make a couple of claims here, but if you don't like it, sue me, fuckers. You fucking claimants. So, anyway, allegedly, and just as a clarification, the claims that I will be making will be things like what you see on the screen right here, where, these are findable things, such as this contract between the king and the 13th United States of North America, signed at the Versailles, July 16th, 1782. There's this one, and there's also the next one, which is the treaty signed in 1783. And essentially, what these are, if you scroll down here, you can see that there's this ledger. And you look down here, it says 18 million. This is 18 million so-called dollars back in the day. This is money that the so-called colonies, the 13 United States, had borrowed from the king. The Revolutionary War wasn't about taxes. It wasn't about taxation without representation. It was about these fucking loans. Read this fucking shit. I'll put all the fucking links into the description. But the reality is this. The reality is this right here. Read this fucking treaty. Then go and read the other one of 1783. And in fact, it says to the reestablished peace between the belligerent powers. This is just a reaffirmation of the other one, of the one from 1782. And it says right in this preamble, what makes it so fucking important is it says in the preamble here, let me see, where is it? Oh, right here, right here, right here. United States to repay them to His Majesty's Royal Treasury. Read these documents. Read this shit. This makes a huge difference. This loan was never paid off. You can see nationaldebtclock.org, where we're into the $30 trillion. Just a couple months ago, it was at 15 trillion. Just a couple months ago. The War of 1812 added to this debt down here. The Spanish-American War added to this debt, and then, of course, the Civil War. And the Civil War, according to what I've heard, added to it greatly. Pretty much like either doubled to tripled the amount of debt owed to the so-called European bankers. What happened is, after the Civil War, according to the story, the banking interests wanted collateral for their loans. They were tired of their loans not being paid off and them not having any so-called collateral. So what took place is in 1871, and again, I'll put all the links, what you see on the screen right here, is an act to provide a government for the District of Columbia. Well, if you read through this, this is a ratification of the so-called Constitution. This creates a private for-profit corporation known as the United States in all uppercase. Not the United States of America, uppercase, lowercase, as written in the so-called original organic Constitution by the Founding Fathers. So, that being said, this private for-profit corporation turned the so-called government that was in place and put it aside. This is kind of an overlay, or even considered to be a foreign hostile occupation. In Downs v. Bidwell, Chief Justice Harlan Marshall stated that two national governments exist, one under the Constitution with all its restrictions, the other one operated by Congress outside and independent of that instrument, meaning the Constitution. That's what we have here in this Act of 1871. If you were to look up in, let's see, actually I might have to type it in here because I don't think I actually pulled this one up. Yeah, let me pull this one up here. 9-307. It's, what happened there? 9-307. Location of debtor. Cornell University Law. Location of debtor. Let's scroll down to H. Oh, looky here. H. Location of debtor. The United States is located in the District of Columbia. And most people think Colombia has something to do with like Colombia, South America. No, this is actually a pagan fertility goddess. Anyway, so yeah, the United States is only in the District of Columbia. And in fact, if you go back to the Act of 1871 here, when you go all the way through it and you read through, there's several sections that describe pretty much the whole 9 yards, talking about the President of the United States and copies of laws, this, that, and the other thing. It goes through and it basically has been now codified in several so-called codes and statutes and such, where it talks about the government being a corporation, a federal corporation, this, that, and the other thing. And again, I can put some of the links in there, but this is stuff that people really need to start looking up. I'm led to believe that there's a passage in the Bible that says it's the glory of God to conceal a matter, and it's the honor of kings to search a matter out. Well, on all of this stuff, don't believe me. Don't believe me one fucking bit. I might be lying my ass off. The only way you're going to know for sure is to look at this, like this document right here on the screen, and you can see where it's memory library of congress.gov. I didn't put this shit here. So anyway, that being said, when it comes down to this whole thing, in fact, let me click through here, get to 12, clicking through to get to section 28, I believe it is. Yeah, section 28, and then we're going to look for 24. or 34 rather. 26, next section here. And be it further enacted, and said legislative assembly shall have the power to create by general law, modify, repeal, or amend within the district within said district corporations aggregate for religious, charitable, educational, industrial, or commercial purposes, and to define their powers and liabilities, provided that the powers of the corporation so created shall be limited to the District of Columbia. Which basically means that anything and everything that they said basically is only supposed to be within the so-called District of Columbia. Imagine that. Let's go to 34 here. And it shall further be enacted that a delegate to the House of Representatives of the United States to serve for a term of 2 years, who shall be a citizen of the United States and of the District of Columbia, and shall have a qualification of a voter may be elected by the voters qualified to elect members of the legislative assembly, who shall entitled to the same rights and privileges are exercised and enjoyed by the delegates of several territories of the United States to the House of Representatives. So let's go back, and it says shall be a citizen and shall have the qualifications of a voter. This is trick wording. Qualifications of a voter. Well, basically what they're saying is you basically have to be the same, you as a voter, to a so-called representative. Well, it just said up here that a representative must be a citizen of the District of Columbia and the United States. Well, the United States, as we've just seen over here in title or in section 9-307, location of debtor, is in the District of Columbia. So, that being said, what we've got here is essentially
97,800.
Oh, screwed that one up. Clicked on the wrong one. What we have here is this little shit right here has continued and grown into this shit right here. And it is because of this shit right here that we have this shit right here. But yet, the whole reason, like I said, for all of this is allegedly because of this debt. But let's type something in here. Let's go 31 USC 5118. Gold clause and consent to sue advertisement. So let's scroll down here. And in this, it basically states that there's an obligation issued containing a gold or governed by a gold clause is discharged on payment dollar for dollar. Basically, what they're saying, obligations of such things such as debt. Any debt is discharged dollar for dollar. Well, when you look through this, it doesn't describe what is a dollar. There is no description of a dollar. And in fact, per case of Montgomery Ward's v. Gene Glazer, in the so-called state of Michigan, it was deemed that a dollar can be whatever you want. And in that case, the judge said, for all I care, make it coffee beans. So Eugene did. And he so-called paid the debt that he was found liable for with something like 1,600 plus coffee beans. This is because even in so-called court cases, what is known as sufficient consideration can be essentially nothing more than a black peppercorn. Something you crush up and put on your steak. The courts have deemed this to be money or sufficient consideration, the this for that, the quid pro quo. Really is nothing more than whatever two or more people agree upon at the moment of contracting. So, that being said, that's it for this part, because essentially, like I said, this is a little bit of some backstory. Do your research. I'll put some links in the description below. And yeah, that's how we got where we're at, so to speak, at this point. And I'll cover contracts a little bit more thoroughly in the next video.